Okay, good morning. Welcome, everyone. It is 10 o'clock, and to respect your time, we're going to get started. For those of you who just entered the space, I would like to remind you that this is going to be recorded, and if you prefer not to appear in the recording, please feel free to anonymize your name. So rename yourself something like a color or an animal, and also turn off your video so that your face won't be on the recording. And if you could advance, Christy. So again, we want to welcome you and say thank you for joining us, for those of you who are here with us live in person, and for those of you who will be watching this recording later, thank you for taking the time. We would like to introduce you to the Outdoor School Special Education and Accessibility Self-Evaluation Tool, which we will be referring to as the SEASET throughout this launch. Many times through this webinar. We just want to thank you for taking the time to join us. And as you're watching this recording, to really just take the time to think about the content that you're going to find in this recording. Advance. So before we get started, I would like to provide a brief introduction to the features here on Zoom that you can use. First, if you go to the right-hand part of the screen, the chat function, anytime throughout this webinar, this meeting, if you have any questions, please feel free to put your questions in that chat. We're also going to have specific times for you to unmute yourself to ask questions, but throughout the chat, if anything comes up, or throughout the meeting, if anything comes up, please put it in the chat. If you go to the left-hand side, that's where you can find your mute and unmute buttons. And for those of you who do not want to show up on the recording, as long as you're muted, it won't pick up your video. And so you can keep your video off and not worry about that at all. And if you could advance. And so we're going to begin by introducing our team that has been working on this tool, and I'll start. My name is Sharissa Jones. I also go by Sharzi. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am a queer Dutch Creole, Dutch Caribbean, South American, cisgender Black immigrant woman. I've been in Oregon for about 5 years now and have been in the field of outdoor and environmental education for over 10 years. This work is really important to me, especially looking at outdoor and environmental engagement along the axes of accessibility, gender, race, sexuality, and how we can ensure that outdoor and environmental spaces actually are accessible and safe for people to enter. So I've been really enjoying working with our team and with the many people who've been helping us to really dive into this tool and lean into my learning edge as I look at what does accessibility mean when we're talking about including disabled communities in the outdoors. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Spirit Brooks. She's on the call and will be speaking if she can, if it's safe for her to do so. Dr. Brooks is our Research Evaluation and Assessment Coordinator. Her pronouns are she, her, hers, and she is an enrolled member of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma. And I will pass it on to Christy.
Thanks, Sharzi. Good morning, everyone. I'm Christy Baki. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an able-bodied cisgender white woman, and I'm the Curriculum and Professional Development Coordinator for our team. And we have this ideal, this goal of outdoor school for all. And I'm very interested in this work because thinking about special education students and accessibility in general, these are areas where we might not be achieving that goal of outdoor school for all. We know that there are some students who aren't coming to outdoor school. And so through this process, I think we're able to provide some tools that can help us to get a little bit closer to achieving that goal. And also, as someone who is not an expert in special education, this has really been an opportunity for me to learn and grow. And so I hope that some of you who are in the same boat will find that this is a great opportunity to sort of push yourself at that learning edge. And I will pass it off to Steve.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name's Steve Braun. I use the pronouns he, him, his. I am a cisgendered, able-bodied white male, and I fill the role or a role of evaluator and consultant working with the Oregon Outdoor School program. And a piece that I really want to highlight, which I think is really relevant today in terms of my identity and my experience coming to this work, is that my background in both environmental education and STEM and outdoor education research and evaluation intersects with a long history as a special educator. I've worked as either a teacher on special assignment, a special education teacher, or a learning specialist in 5 different states, and have filled a lot of different roles and have supported a lot of different students and communities working with students with exceptional needs. And for a long time have seen a really big need here of supporting students with exceptional needs in outdoor and environmental education in public school settings. And so this really comes to this awesome moment for me to be able to realize some of this work and support a community to move forward in doing this. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Stacy Arbuckle.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white cisgendered woman, and I am a doctoral student at the University of Oregon and have been fortunate enough to participate in this work. I attended outdoor school as a 6th grader up in Seattle, Washington, went back as a high school leader, and when I became a special education teacher, also went back to train high school leaders. And so when I was presented with this opportunity to join this team, I was really excited to join kind of both my passions for supporting students with exceptional needs and attending outdoor school. As I've dove into this work, I realized that attending outdoor school was the first experience I actually had where I saw myself as a teacher, and I think kind of set me on this path in education. And so this work is so important to me because we think that every student, especially given here in Oregon, that we have this funding to provide this experience for all kids, that it's important to look at making sure that all children have that sort of meaningful and authentic and transformative experience at outdoor schools. So I'm happy to be here with you all today.
So we'd like to frame our time together by acknowledging that we, those of us in the Willamette Valley, are on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Kalapuya peoples who are represented within the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, as well as the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. They have lived on the lands we call home since time immemorial. As well as we can, we'd like to acknowledge the lands of the people. We would also like to acknowledge the lands of the people of Portland Metro, where some of you are joining us from today, and recognize that Portland's Native community is diverse and vibrant and is descended from over 380 tribes, and that many Native folks in Portland are multi-ethnic and multi-tribal. The Portland metro area lies on traditional homelands of the Multnomah, the Cowlitz, the Wasco, the Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of the Chinook, the Tualatin Kalapuya, the Malala, and many other tribes who make and contribute to make and continue to make their homes along the Columbia River. I also want to acknowledge that some of you are joining us from Eastern and Southern Oregon, the current homes of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla, Warm Springs, and Burns Paiute, and the Cow Creek Band of the Umpqua Indians. In acknowledging that all outdoor education takes place on Indigenous homelands, and in taking the time to consider settler colonial legacy of displacement and settlement, we acknowledge the long and, most importantly, continuous relationships with the lands on which we gather for meetings, even when we're doing it virtually. In the act of recognition of the legacy of violence, genocide, and forced assimilation that continues to this day, we may take some level of responsibility. As we think about the context of our work here today, and we consider how we, as an outdoor school community, can continue to be of service to Indigenous youth and communities of the state, land acknowledgement is one way to recognize and respect Indigenous peoples of Oregon and how they continue to survive and persevere, continue to take care of the land. We pay respects to their ancestors and elders past and present. As we're modeling this land acknowledgement for you today, we would like to invite all of you to consider how a land acknowledgement might be a first step rather than an only step. There are some positive aspects of land acknowledgement, including the fact that they can upset the concept that this land was free and empty, as if it wasn't occupied before white settlement came in, that there remains to be Indigenous people who continue to persevere and survive. It reminds us that while colonized, we have a responsibility to respect Indigenous people, and it continues to deal with erasure and the forces that settlers are trying to erase from this area and make us think about our positionality. However, we want to really emphasize the fact that land acknowledgements are a step and they are not the only step. If we only focus on land acknowledgement, then, and especially if we're only focusing on the past of Indigenous peoples, we're co-signing Indigenous peoples to being part of that past and not part of the future or the present. If we only think about a land acknowledgement, we are only thinking about box ticking, and that's performative, and we're not actually looking at how we can engage with our Indigenous communities. So as you decide to incorporate land acknowledgement into your practice, I invite you to think of it as a first step, but not the only step in building relationships with Native communities in your region. Thanks.
Thank you, Sharzi. So I want to provide some more framing for today. And I'm going to start with some quotes that, with a quote that speaks to the need, and then some which speak to the purpose. So I'm going to read this. And this quote comes from a public school administrator. And they say, "Where can teachers get the info they need to make the determination if kids' needs can be met at outdoor school? I feel like folks at the school level either keep kids back without solid knowledge about the outdoor school program, facility, and supports, or plan for kids who have significant needs to attend outdoor school, and then it's not successful in a very public way." So this quote exemplifies a need, which is obviously not fully pervasive everywhere, of which the purpose quotes will exemplify. But what this shows is students either not going, so that's exclusion, or going and not receiving the supports, which is also a form of exclusion. So you can go to the next slide. So now I want to point us towards our purpose. And this and the next quote come from grant reports from outdoor school programs. It says, "One student had autism and some other personal issues. His mother was very concerned about his ability to attend. And we allow and encourage parent chaperones to attend our programs. So we made arrangements for the student and his mother to have their own cabin. The student was then able to be safe, have his dignity protected, and still participate in the program to the fullest." You can go to the next. The final is that students with behavioral issues or extremely reserved in typical school settings came out of their shell or were a great leader at outdoor school and then took that experience back to the classroom. Now, these last two quotes really speak to inclusion, and that is the direction that we're going to be going today, is appropriate inclusion so students can have what our big goal is, right? A transformative outdoor school experience, one that is inclusive, meaningful, and high quality. And go to the next. So with that, I want to tell you our official purpose as listed in the SEASET, which is that this self-evaluation tool is designed to support outdoor school programs in becoming more inclusive and accessible, and specifically for students with exceptional needs. Now, in order to really move through the SEASET today, we're going to have to provide some background knowledge. And so we're going to transition to a video which provides some basics of special education in schools, this foundational information for us to move forward.
Thanks, Steve. I will get us set up here. All right. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to watching myself on a video while 30 other people also watch me on a video. So here we go. If you have any trouble hearing this, just let me know. Otherwise, we'll get started here. Hi, I'm Christy Baki, the OSU Extension Service Outdoor School Programs Curriculum and Professional Development Coordinator. Outdoor School for All means every student in Oregon should have an opportunity to attend an outdoor school program that meets their needs, including students with exceptional needs. Within the special education community, the term exceptional needs describes students with learning difficulties, physical or sensory impairments, and or behavior needs who require specialized services, modifications, and or accommodations to their education to help them learn and engage in school. These students have a right to meaningful and supportive outdoor school experiences. In this video, I will describe how special education operates in K-12 education and what this means for outdoor school. This video is intended for educational purposes, but near the end, I will direct you to our official guidance for district teams. Prior to 1975, youth with exceptional needs did not have the right to attend school with their peers. In fact, families were encouraged to institutionalize their children by placing them in full-time residential care facilities where they were denied access to an appropriate education and socialization with non-disabled peers. Students who were permitted in schools were often kept in special classrooms that separated them from the rest of the school community and failed to meet their individualized learning needs. On November 29, 1975, President Gerald Ford signed the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, which required all states that accepted money from the federal government to provide equal access to education for children with disabilities. In 1990, this law was amended and renamed the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. IDEA has been revised and updated several times since 1990 and remains the major piece of federal legislation outlining requirements for special education services in public schools. IDEA guarantees a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE, in the least restrictive environment, or LRE, to students who qualify for special education services. In other words, we must ensure that students with exceptional needs are provided with meaningful learning experiences, FAPE, and that they are educated alongside their peers in the general education environment to the greatest extent possible, LRE. IDEA outlines a specific process for how these decisions are made. Each public school student who requires special education has an individualized education program, or IEP. An IEP is a legally binding document that outlines the strengths and needs of an individual student. This document is developed by an IEP team that includes special education staff, the family, and the student when appropriate. It's the responsibility of this IEP team to determine the appropriate level, intensity, and design of individualized supports to meet each student's needs. The scope of an IEP varies from student to student. One student may have an IEP that describes individualized supports for reading instruction only, while another student may have an IEP that outlines support across all content areas, such as reading, writing, and math, as well as social, emotional, and adaptive needs. The IEP document describes the modifications and accommodations that will be made to the student's educational experience to ensure that the student can learn and progress alongside their peers. It also includes data about the child's least restrictive environment, or LRE, for example, by specifying how much time per day the student will spend in special education and general education settings. If the student will not participate in some of the activities of their peers, the IEP team must explain why this is necessary. The IEP team makes determinations about a student's placement. Placement is a term used in special education to describe the environment in which the student's IEP will be implemented. When the IEP team makes placement decisions, they are trying to ensure that the student receives a free and appropriate education, FAPE, in the least restrictive environment, LRE. Placement varies for each student across a wide range of possibilities. For example, In a relatively restrictive placement, a student may require full-time one-on-one support from a special education teacher, aide, or paraprofessional, with limited participation in activities with their non-disabled peers. In a relatively non-restrictive placement, a student may spend all of their time with the general education class, with the special education teacher providing recommendations to the classroom teacher for accommodations to support the student. IEPs are reviewed at least once per year, with the IEP team reevaluating whether the student's current placement is still the least restrictive environment in which the IEP goals can be met. Next, I'm going to describe 504 plans. Both IEPs and 504 plans outline supports for students, but they are not interchangeable terms. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is a federal law that provides a broad spectrum of protections against discrimination on the basis of disability. All public schools and school districts, as well as all public charter schools and magnet schools that receive federal financial assistance, must comply with Section 504, and every district is required to have a 504 coordinator. A public school student who meets the definition of an individual with a disability under Section 504 is entitled to receive education services that meet their individual educational needs as adequately as the needs of students without disabilities are being met. Section 504 also requires, among other things, that a student with a disability receive an equal opportunity to participate in athletics and extracurricular activities and to be free from bullying and harassment based on disability. Section 504 has a broader definition of disability than IDEA. Under Section 504, a disability must substantially limit one or more major life activities, such as learning, communicating, or taking care of oneself. Section 504 does not contain a list of specific disabilities. IDEA, on the other hand, outlines a specific set of disabilities that could qualify someone for services, such as a traumatic brain injury or an orthopedic impairment. And the child must need specialized instruction or special education to make progress in school. Because Section 504 uses a broader definition of disability, a child who doesn't qualify for an IEP might still be able to get a 504 plan. 504 plans can also apply to students with temporary disabilities when the temporary disability limits major life activities. A Section 504 plan describes what services and accommodations a school will provide for a student with a disability. There is no standard 504 plan, though the Oregon Department of Education does offer sample forms that schools may choose to use. A 504 plan generally includes the specific accommodations and services a child will receive, as well as information about who will provide those services and who will ensure that the plan is implemented. A 504 plan is implemented by the general education staff compared to an IEP, which is implemented and managed by special education staff. 504 plans are typically not as in-depth as IEPs, and everything in a 504 plan can be included in an IEP. As a result, students typically have either an IEP or a 504 plan. Okay, so now that we've gone over some basics of K-12 special education, let's return back to outdoor school. The OSU Extension Service Outdoor School Program provides funding to public school districts and education service districts, or ESDs, to support students' attendance at outdoor school as part of the school curriculum. Any specially designed instruction for students with exceptional needs at outdoor school is the responsibility of the district or ESD. For districts or ESDs that contract with outdoor school providers, the provider may play an important role in supporting and responding to the district special education team as they make placement decisions and develop accommodations and modifications for students attending outdoor school. The outdoor school provider may also implement accommodations during outdoor school in collaboration with the special education team, which has information about the specific needs of individual students. The OSU Extension Service Outdoor School Program has developed a special education and outdoor school team guidance document for district special education teams that includes information about preparing for outdoor school as part of IEP and Section 504 planning processes. Our special education and accessibility self-evaluation tool, offers strategies for outdoor school providers to collaborate with school special education teams to support students with exceptional needs before and during the outdoor school experience. It also outlines characteristics of accessible and inclusive programs and teaching. Both documents are available on our website, outdoorschool.oregonstate.edu. These documents and this video are all in service of the same goal. Every student in Oregon has a transformative outdoor school experience, one that is inclusive, meaningful, and high quality. Currently, approximately 14% of public school students receive special education services protected under IDEA, and most of these students spend 80% or more of their school day in inclusive general education classrooms. To serve all students, we need to move away from thinking, how can we fix this disability, and move towards thinking, how can we make our learning environment a place where all students can learn, regardless of their needs. As we work towards our goal of inclusive, meaningful, and high-quality outdoor school experiences for every student, collaboration and creativity will play essential roles in ensuring that students with exceptional needs receive the support they deserve at outdoor school. We encourage you to reach out to our team at outdoorschool@oregonstate.edu if we can help you in your work to make outdoor school more accessible and inclusive. Let's see if I can figure out how to get out of this. There we go.
Hi,
And we're back.
I'm Baki, the
Uh-oh,
OSU
we're not back.
Service
Can you
Outdoor
hear
School
it again?
Programs.
Let's just close that. Sorry about that, everybody. All right, Stacy, I will hand it back to you.
All right, thanks for that wonderful introduction, Christy. You did a wonderful job on that video. So as Christy mentioned in our intro video, we as a team have developed this document designed to support school and district special education teams as they make decisions about outdoor school. I'm going to give a brief overview of the document, which was popped into the chat by Sharzi. Thanks for that. And at the end of this session, Christy will direct you where to find it on our website. All right, so the purpose of our team guidance document is to provide support and guidance for IEP teams, 504 teams, in making decisions about placement and accommodations and modifications for students attending outdoor school. We encourage you to check this document out, and we will go through a couple tips that are provided in here, but you can read the rest on your own at your own convenience. Next slide. So the recommended use for this tool is to distribute to school district teams before 4th grade IEP and 504 meetings to allow time for the teams to collaborate on designing accommodations and modifications, communicating with outdoor school providers, and then also making time to request the necessary funding, which is available and will be discussed later for student supports in outdoor school implementation. And we'll talk about this later. Next slide. All right, and so although this document was written for school and district teams, we do recommend that outdoor school providers read this guidance as well with your team prior to using the SEASET, as it provides information about what collaboration between school districts and outdoor school providers might look like. And so if you're an example for collaboration and communication might be that if your student has needs related to accessibility while at outdoor school, it's advised that the team discuss these needs with the following individuals in planning and implementation. So we want to make sure that the outdoor school program provider is involved, the outdoor school facility manager has an important role, district representative who's responsible for completing the outdoor school funding application would be important in this team. And then also the OSU Extension Service Outdoor School Program Outreach and Inclusion Coordinator can also be a resource in this process as well. On to Steve.
Thank you. So I want to bring us back to the purpose and just remind everyone again, the self-evaluation tool is designed to support outdoor school programs in becoming more inclusive and accessible, specifically for students with exceptional needs. So with that, we just started with a bunch of important background information around special education and outdoor school. Now I want to do something similar with evaluation and provide some background about that. So I want to begin with a reminder of evaluative thinking and then break down this simplified evaluation cycle with examples specific to Oregon outdoor schools. Now, many of us might think about evaluation narrowly and only consider the first part of this cycle, number 1, which we list as consider, monitor, and evaluate. And I'm going to begin with that, but I want to assert that evaluation is much broader than the first bullet. So first, when we think about evaluation within a cycle, we start with evaluation, right? These are the things that we're familiar with. So for Oregon outdoor schools, and the SEASET in specific, this is the first half of this document where we use a rubric-like format to consider the things we're doing. Many of you may be familiar with what we call here affectionately the common measures, which is kind of a misnomer, but it's outcome-based surveys that are provided at the end of a program. It goes to students or teachers, and of course there's also the end-of-year reporting that schools do. This is consider, monitor, and evaluate. Then we move to the second part of this cycle, which is reflection and planning. This is the learning part. And so this looks like professional development or action planning. And this is the final pages in the SEASET. It also looks like targeted professional development, which is informed by our evaluation. Then we move to implementation and programming. Number 3, apply, improve, and instruct. This might look like community engagement that outdoor school programs do, community engagement that the statewide program does, culturally responsive programming. This is all the good, awesome work that you do in your communities and with your students. And then that brings us back to the first part of the cycle. Now I want to stress a few things here before I move forward. First is that all of these stages are driven by the core value of equity. It's a lens in which to do and consider our work. I want to stress this idea of ongoing iteration and reflection. This could happen annually, biannually, it just kind of depends on where your program is at. Also, to think about this idea of evaluation to learning to practice, not evaluation for reporting and performance. So with that, we think about, with that, operationally in the Oregon State Outdoor School Program, professional development and evaluation efforts are totally aligned. It's, again, evaluation for learning. I want folks to approach this work with humbleness and a growth mindset. We recognize that people might come to this work with a ton of experience or just getting started. And regardless, we all have a lot of work to do. Students and communities' needs are constantly changing. And accordingly, we've designed these broader evaluative supports and learning supports to really meet people, programs, and communities where they are. Finally, before I move away from this slide, I just want to say this, is that evaluation is not a dirty word. I recognize for some, evaluation might bring around thoughts about their middle or high school grades, where maybe they were nervous or scared about what those grades might look like coming home. This is about growth and not grades, and I can't stress that enough. And for those of you who decide to work with the SEASET, and if you decide to share your results or experiences with it, with the larger support network, I want to stress that these results will never be used as punitive measures to funding. Rather, it's for support. So you can advance to the next slide. One other piece to this primer on evaluation is the distinction between inputs and outcomes. A lot of people think about evaluation in terms of outcomes. And we, in the Oregon State University Outdoor School Program, we evaluate outcomes via surveys. So this is, again, this end of program student survey or teacher survey. Outcomes are more or less the effect of what we do. This tool, the SEASET, and all the self-eval tools that we've launched, evaluates what we do, the cause. This is input level evaluation. And the metaphor I like to use when thinking about the distinction between inputs and outcomes is that outcome evaluation considers the signal that happens in the air, right? And input or process level evaluation considers whatever puts up that signal. So you could think about a cell phone tower, right? And input is the tower, and then whatever that signal is that reaches our phones is the outcome. One final point I want to stress is that the SEASET and all of our self-eval tools are aligned and informed by the outcomes level evaluation that we do, often referred to as the common measures. And as said earlier, professional development. You can advance. So with that, we're going to start with number one, self-evaluating what we're doing in relation to inclusion and accessibility, again, rather than what results from what we're doing. So I'm going to pass the mic to Christy, who will be moving you through the SEASET, which does just that.
Thanks, Steve. So as with all equity work, the concepts within the SEASET are very complex. And so this is our attempt to sort of distill that complexity down into manageable chunks. And so the first order of organization within the tool is into themes. And there are 3 themes, and the colors that you see here on the screen match the colors that are in the document. So if you're following along, that may be useful information. The 3 themes are collaboration and compliance, facility and program, and teaching and learning. And for all 3 of those, we're focused on inclusive practices. So then within each theme, we have what are called characteristics. So this breaks down that theme into smaller pieces. So we're going to start with collaboration and compliance here and sort of zoom in. And if you are following along in the document, the page numbers will appear up in the top right-hand corner. That indicates what page of the SEASET document we're referring to on the slide. So the collaboration and compliance theme is broken into 3 characteristics: governance and management, collaboration and communication, and IEP team and Section 504 team involvement. The second theme, facility and program, is broken into 4 characteristics: physical space, accommodations, assistive technology and supporting materials, and social inclusion. And the third theme, teaching and learning, is also broken into 4 characteristics: individualized and asset-based, curriculum, instruction and pedagogy, and accommodations and modifications. So our biggest order of organization, biggest scale of organization was the themes. Then within each theme, we have the characteristics, and it goes down into another level of detail where each characteristic is broken into multiple qualifiers. So we're going to zoom in on accommodations and modifications, the last characteristic here. And so here's what it will look like in the document. So the characteristic accommodations and modifications can be qualified by you and your teammates as absent, emerging, or highly effective in your program. So within each one of those boxes, you can see we have some bullet points that describe what it might look like for this characteristic to be absent, to be emerging, or to be highly effective. And I will note at the bottom, you can see that there is a glossary associated with this tool. And at the end of this presentation, we will go over how it is that you can access that glossary. So I want to make a couple of points about the way that these qualifiers are set up. The most important one is that we have them set up as absent, emerging, and highly effective rather than as numbered categories for a reason. So when things have numbered categories, like if absent was 0, emerging was 1, and highly effective was 2, it basically weights the characteristics as all being equal. And so that's a decision that you and your team will make about which of these characteristics are most important. It wasn't a decision that we felt that we should be making for programs. And also, often when there's a number, I know this is true for me, I get very fixated on the number and sort of clearing the threshold of getting a score that's high enough to put me in the good category. And we're trying to very much push against that idea here and really lean into this idea that everyone has opportunities for growth. And so no matter how well you're doing and whether you're incorporating many of these characteristics in a highly effective way already, there's always more work to be done. And so what I would like to do now, just to make sure that everyone sort of understands the process of how this works, is we're going to go through, give you a little bit of time to go through this one on your own and then ask any questions. You'll see this column over here at the very right, which is for evidence. And this is where, as you and your team are using the tool, you would record evidence of why you have qualified accommodations and modifications as absent, emerging, or highly effective. Because when you come back together as a team to discuss, this information will be really useful to contribute to those conversations. So what I would like you to do now is to visualize how you approach accommodations and modifications in your program and actually try this process of qualifying your program and thinking of evidence to support your choice. And I'm going to mute myself here for a couple minutes to give you time to go through that. And then I will open it up to see if anyone has any questions about this process of using the tool. Because we're only going to go through this one here today. And the hope is that you can take the lessons learned and the practice from today and apply it to the rest of the tool on your own time. So I will go ahead and mute myself here for a couple of minutes. All right, so I would like to offer an opportunity for folks to ask any questions or raise any issues about the process of qualifying this characteristic as absent, emerging, or highly effective. And a note for folks who are watching the webinar, you're always, or the recording of this, you're always welcome to email us at outdoorschool@oregonstate.edu with any questions or concerns, and we will be happy to answer them that way. So I will pause for a minute to let folks enter any questions they have into the chat, or if you are interested in speaking out loud, you're welcome to unmute yourself with a note that by unmuting yourself, it will make you appear in the recording of the video that's going to show up on our website. So I will pause here to see if any questions are out there.
Christy, it looks like Catherine has her hand raised. Go ahead, Catherine.
Thank you, Stacy, and thanks, Christy. This has been, and Stephen, this has been really helpful. One of the things that I noticed about the rubric is that a lot of the distinctions between absent, emerging, and highly effective, or that top, not top, but that third category are partially or largely dependent upon the schools and the districts and their special education teams being willing to participate on that level. And in direct experience, sometimes that has been the case and often that has not been the case. So is there any advice that you could give or encouragement, or could you provide some information on how you're working with the districts at that level to make them aware that this is something that has benefit for them, or how they might be able to do that with the outdoor education or outdoor school providers to achieve those outcomes, those more desirable outcomes?
Thanks, Catherine, for that question. I wonder, Stacy or Steve, as special educators, if you have any comments on that. I'll give you the floor first.
I can respond. Thanks, Catherine. Awesome question. So the first, before I answer your question, the perspective I want to offer is to think about this from a systemic approach, right? So while an outdoor school program might be looking at just how they're performing and or performing, how well they're doing to meet the students' needs. I also invite you to think about how we move the whole system forward. And so as we do that, we recognize there's a lot of different moving parts, right? There's, all the programs collectively, all the districts collectively. So start with that perspective, just to think on a systemic statewide level. Next, as we work with schools and school districts, I think a lot of things, though it'll happen slowly, will stem from the IP and 504 guidance document and the outreach that we're doing specific around funding and the education that we're doing that. And so that is a pretty big, I would offer, signal and trigger to start to think about how we support students with exceptional needs at outdoor school. And as we go back to those framing quotes I provided, which speak to the need, we really want to start to move more towards the purpose and have districts and special education teams see the transformative effect of outdoor school. And I recognize it's going to take a while. And so we're just starting to put these pieces in place. And so I would say, review the 504 guidance document, share it with your teams, deliver it to districts and ed service districts, start to craft those relationships, direct those district reps into making the funding requests on the funding application. And if you have other thoughts, share them. Let's all move this forward. And so as ideas come forth, bring them to us, to your community, and so we can magnify those.
I have just a second and third very quick part of that question. And this might be just unique to our experience, or it might be more widespread. Not every school has the same types of special education classrooms. And so not every school has the same type of students or same number of students with exceptional needs. So is there an inherent understanding that there's going to be some variability in the outcomes because the students are diverse, even in schools with special education classrooms? And the second part is, what supports can we provide from OSU, or is there any supports that we can share for the instructional assistants that are doing one-on-one with some of the students? And I'm thinking life skills students and some of the others that have those one-on-one aids that come out. So we've noticed a great big variability in how comfortable they are actually in an outdoor education environment or are helping to provide instruction. And some of them just get right in, and some of them are really view their role as being there for that particular student, and they'd really like to leave the instruction to someone else. Are there any resources that we can share with them, or either produced by you all, or should we direct them to you all to help support that confidence and that kind of participation? Or how should we approach that?
So I can maybe address that second question, and I'll send the first part of that back to Steve. But for the second one, we don't currently have something like that in place, and this is amazing feedback and a good direction for us to go with what kind of support can we provide, whether it's a video or some sort of handout or something that can be used to support that particular audience. Thanks for that suggestion, Catherine. I think that's awesome. And just actually a plug, we have a professional development survey out right now, which I will get the link to in a moment. And on that survey, these are exactly the kinds of things that we're looking for information about. What is it about your outdoor school program that presents a challenge that might be addressed through professional development? We are absolutely looking for that information, both sort of on a short time scale, like, during school closures this year, and also thinking a few years ahead. And so we will get the link to that posted into the chat. And actually, I'm wondering if anyone from my team might be able to do that so I don't mess up the screen share. And I encourage you to please fill that out. And thanks, Catherine. And Steve, I'll send the first part of that question over to you.
Yeah, so in terms of varying needs of students, like that's exactly it. Everyone's got different needs, which you of course totally know. I would say, again, to stress that the responsibility for implementing specialized services lies within the IEP team. They are the ones who know the students. So putting on the outdoor school provider hat, it's about establishing collaborative relationships with special education teams, departments, whether it's in the ed service district or the homeschool district or in the actual school. So inviting those people out there, crafting those relationships it's not the only step, but it's a good first step. For super duper in-depth work around special education and accessibility in outdoor schools, that is, maybe I'm gonna ask Sharzi, is that kind of what part of the targeted funding application looks like that we're going to be talking about later? The consultation?
Yes, that could definitely be part of it. So I agree with everything that Christy and Steve have brought up so far. And it's like what Steve said, it's moving parts because we have to look at it at a systemic level and then individually. So there are things that OSU Extension can help support and provide. And part of that is with the equity grants for equity, diversity, and inclusion, and the site accessibility grants that are currently out. And part of that is what kinds of relationships can you build with your special education teams. So as we're going to go forward and look at the rest of the SEASET, which includes an improvement plan. Part of that plan is looking at how do you define team? And for so long, we've thought about our outdoor school providers themselves as a team, but within this concept, we are thinking about including special education teams within schools as part of your team so that they could help further provide information about what that looks like in terms of what the students' needs are with a particular school, to help outdoor school providers to make sure that they are creating programming that will meet the needs of those students. So that will like address the diversity of programming that you were talking about before, Catherine. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah put in the chat the professional development survey. But yes, this is really great feedback and things that we have been thinking about. So I'm glad that you're thinking about it as well.
Other questions? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and go on, but we will have time at the end. And also several of us on the team can hang on after this call for additional questions. So I am going to pass it over to Sharzi to talk about how to use the tool. And so as you'll see, this is in the document itself on page 3.
Thank you, Christy. So when we're looking at the tool, the first thing we want to do is gather members of your team representing a variety of roles, and that includes organizational leadership that could actually make change in what programming and curriculum looks like, and also operational staff, partners, and community served. And this would be the space where, as I was saying before, you would include as you can the special education teams with the different schools and districts that you're working with, just so that they could help you provide that perspective, and then you can provide the perspective from the outdoor school programming side to see how you can create programming that truly will meet the needs of all of the students. And then for each individual within this team or on this team, think about considering everyone's current understanding of accessibility and inclusion. We are all coming at this from different perspectives, different backgrounds, different experiences, and getting that out in front and transparent first will really help everybody on the team to see what everybody's viewpoints are and where they're coming from. And then thirdly, in this first phase of considering monitoring and evaluating our programs as a team or individually, depending on how this feels for your team members, read each characteristic definition of the 3 different themes. Take notes that include specific examples relative to your organization in the evidence section that shows where your programming is. And that will encompass what our first phase of utilizing this tool is. And now we're going to move from this first phase to our second phase of reflecting, connecting, learning, and planning from all of this evidence and data that we've collected. So at this point, step 4 is to hold a team meeting where everyone comes back and you share your notes from what came out with when you were doing the SEASET and discuss. So look at what characteristics were found to be absent, where you are emerging, where you are highly effective for your outdoor school programming. Use the special education and accessibility report and reflection and improvement plan to evaluate and reflect on each of the characteristics relative to accessibility and inclusion and equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we really want you to be able to celebrate where you have really great evidence that you're doing good work and build upon that. And then also look at the places where you are lacking. You might be absent or emerging, and figure out what you can do to improve and to move your programming forward. Next slide. So this is what our special education and accessibility report, reflection, and improvement plan looks like. Here is where you would tally up your team's qualifiers and try to get a broader picture of what your organization looks like currently from all the different perspectives of the different individuals on your team who are answering these very same questions. I really want to note that it is okay and perfectly normal for different people on your team to evaluate your program in different ways. You might see something as absent, whereas somebody else might see something as emergent. This isn't the space to tear down anybody for their opinions, but to really ask questions and to try to figure out why are folks seeing the program in these different areas that could really illuminate some areas that you might not have a perspective on or background in that somebody on your team does. It could illuminate some areas when you're working with the special education teams where they're really stressing a component that you had never thought about before because nobody had either voiced it to you or you had never experienced that community before. And so that is completely fine to have different members of your team evaluating the program in different ways. What you're trying to do from this is to see what the different perspectives are and how you can move forward to improve your programming so that it is representative of the students and that it will meet the needs when they come to you. Now our last piece of this is a reflection page. And for most of the programs, we would recommend that you focus on only a couple of characteristics to target for improvement so that you can really focus on improving your programming in those areas rather than trying to improve all of the characteristics in every area and possibly biting off too much and not really making any progress. The reflection piece at the top on the left-hand side is a place where your team would identify the characteristics that they want to target to move forward towards improvement. And then on the right-hand side, so box number 2, is where you would be addressing these characteristics and talking about the challenges that you might expect and how to deal with them. Any ideas, if you have any ideas, or who would you need to pull into a conversation to help you illuminate how to address these problems. And then at the bottom, the special education and accessibility improvement plan is where you would set your goals, make a clear objective or whatever the change that needs to occur, and then identify actions that need to happen in order to achieve this change. And actions can include partnerships that you need to build. And this space you can use to try to identify what kind of professional development you would need. And then, coming back to OSU Extension Outdoor School and asking for support and help in that area. An example would be requesting specific professional development related to your goal, and then working through these characteristics and evaluations with consulting, such like our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion grant that we have out currently now, and saying that you would like to have some work with a consulting agency around accessibility and inclusion to ensure that your programming really is truly meeting those needs of the students. And so now that we have this overview of the document, Stacy's going to provide some more tips on how to use it.
Thanks, Sharzy. So as we've stated multiple times, the goal of this tool is to support teams to engage in this multidisciplinary, multi-team process required in planning a meaningful outdoor school experience for all students. So we should expect that all programs will find areas for growth. That is expected. And then we want to make clear that the intent of this tool is not to standardize the outdoor school experience or shame the organization, nor will it ever be used for a punitive fashion related to funding. So our goal is to support teams in identifying areas of need and areas of strength so we can capitalize on what's already happening and also improve the areas so we can make sure that all students are having access to this experience. Next slide. So the SEASET has 2 tip sheets that we've developed that offer suggestions for using the tool. Don't try to read the text on the screenshot, it's in the document, but I am going to highlight a couple of the tips here and then you can read the others on your own. So one of the tips is to focus on the goal of the work rather than using the tool correctly. So as long as we're centering our practices and our systems around the goal of this work, that inclusive, meaningful, high quality, transformative experience for all students, then you're definitely on the right track. The goal is not to score or grade. The goal is also not to use the tool correctly. So really focusing on that why we're using the tool is the first tip to help move you through this process. And next slide. And then also some other examples of tips include that consulting with your special ed teams, as Catherine brought up, is central to this process. We do not expect outdoor school providers to become special education experts, and this will definitely take time. And collaboration across teams and inclusion of families and caregivers as well, which we've highlighted in the tool, is also necessary for this work to be successful. So now that you have an overview of the document, including some tips on how to use it, we want to talk a bit about what comes next. So now we move ourselves into stage 3 of the evaluation cycle, which occurs in your respective communities. And these are all the incredible things that you do as outdoor educators, which include things such as outdoor school programming, facility upgrades and modifications, community engagement and partnership, strategic planning for the implementation of these practices when kids come to outdoor school, maybe modifying your curriculum that you already have in place to meet the individual needs of students and communities. And then also, it could also include updating your materials such as your website or your staff policies to reflect your commitment to this work. All right, next slide.
Thanks, Stacy. So as part of this apply, improve, and instruct piece, we know that there's a lot of sort of questions swirling around the idea of how Measure 99 funds can be used to support students with exceptional needs at outdoor school. So we have another short video that we are going to show about that topic. And let me go ahead and get this going. Hi, I'm Christy Baki. Can you see me? Oh, it's buffering. We'll have to be patient for just a second. I'm Christy Baki. Uh-oh. The OSU Extension Service Outdoor School Program's Curriculum and Professional Development Coordinator. The OSU Extension Service Outdoor School Program is committed to supporting all students at outdoor school, including students with exceptional needs. Within the special education community, the term exceptional needs refers to students with learning difficulties, physical or sensory impairments, and or behavior needs who require specialized services, modifications, and or accommodations to their education in order to learn and engage at school. In this video, I'm going to describe how Measure 99 funding can be used to support students with exceptional needs at outdoor school. In 2016, Oregon voters approved Measure 99, Outdoor School for All, which dedicates a portion of Oregon lottery funds to support 5th and 6th grade students to attend outdoor school in Oregon. School districts and education service districts apply for these funds through our office, the OSU Extension Service Outdoor School Program. In their applications, districts can request resources to support students with exceptional needs. Later in this video, I will describe the process for requesting funds, but first, I want to answer the question, what types of expenses may be allowed? The list I will provide is not exhaustive. We have more information on our website, and we also expect to continue learning from schools and communities about what students need. So first up, rentals. Measure 99 funds may be used to rent additional space or resources from an outdoor school site or provider to accommodate students' needs. For example, if a student has nighttime medical needs that can only be addressed with dignity in a private cabin, a district may request approval to use Measure 99 funds to rent a cabin for the student to share with their parent, guardian, or other caregiver. Transportation. Measure 99 funds may be used to cover bus fees, fuel, mileage, driver, or charter costs that are not reimbursed by other sources such as Title I, Title IX, or the Oregon Department of Education. If a student with exceptional needs requires separate transportation, this may be an allowable expense. For example, if a student requires equipment that is not available on a standard school bus, the district may request approval to use Measure 99 funds to rent a suitable bus or to support travel in a personal vehicle that has the equipment that the student needs. These expenses are allowable both for the outdoor school experience itself and for any school-sponsored outdoor school orientation or information events at the outdoor school facility before the student attends outdoor school. Personnel. Measure 99 funds can be used to reimburse personnel costs not covered by other contracts or sources for teachers, teachers' aides, paraprofessionals, nurses, translators, and one-on-one aides. Generally, personnel costs are reimbursable up to a maximum of 9 hours per day. You can find more information about how personnel costs are calculated on our website. Measure 99 funds may be used to support personnel to attend outdoor school and also for the time that personnel spend planning. For example, the time a special education teacher spends planning modifications and accommodations for students with exceptional needs at outdoor school. Measure 99 funds may also be used to support substitute reimbursements. For example, if a special education teacher or paraprofessional attends outdoor school and needs someone to cover their classes at school. Printed materials. Schools and districts may request Measure 99 funds to modify outdoor school printed materials into accessible formats for students with exceptional needs, for example, to create large print versions or versions written in Braille. Outdoor school providers should incorporate expenses for modifying printed materials into their per student costs. Equipment. Measure 99 funds may be used to purchase equipment or assistive technology for students with exceptional needs when the equipment or assistive technology the student uses at school is not suitable for outdoor school. For example, if a student's wheelchair cannot be taken on unpaved trails or the beach, a district may request approval to use Measure 99 funds to purchase an off-road wheelchair for the student to use during outdoor school. At the end of the outdoor school experience, this off-road wheelchair would remain the property of the district for primary use at outdoor school. So now that you have examples of the types of expenses that may be allowable under Measure 99, you might be wondering how districts apply for funds to cover these expenses. Each spring, school districts and ESDs can apply for outdoor school funding for the upcoming school year. Our OSU Extension Service outdoor school team establishes a per student funding threshold each year. For example, for the 2020-2021 school year, the threshold for a 3-day, 2-night program is $385 per student. During the application process, each district or ESD can either accept the pre-assigned threshold value for the length of the program they will attend, or they can request funds above this threshold with justification for those expenses. If a district selects yes, the threshold value is adequate, no more information is needed. If a district determines that equipment or personnel needed to support students with exceptional needs will require funds above the threshold amount, they will select no, the threshold value is not adequate. Additional fields will appear where the district can provide their estimated costs in our 4 cost categories: provider fees, transportation, stipend/personnel, and program costs. And they'll submit the justification for those higher costs as part of the application. Our team will review the request and justification, and if they are determined to be acceptable, we will approve the application. The district would then be issued a work order that includes the approved expenses. You can read more about the application process and allowable and prohibited expenses on our website, outdoorschool.oregonstate.edu. We encourage you to remember that we welcome requests for funding to support students with exceptional needs at outdoor school, even when these costs push a district's or ESD's application above the per student funding threshold. It is our hope that a student's needs are the driving force in determining the support they receive at outdoor school. Thank you for your commitment to supporting students with exceptional needs at outdoor school and for helping us to achieve our shared goal that every student in Oregon has a transformative outdoor school experience, one that is inclusive, meaningful, and high quality. All right. Great. So now, in our last 15 minutes, I'm going to go over the resources that we have available to accompany the Special Education and Accessibility Self-Evaluation Tool. And so hopefully you can see here that I'm on the Outdoor School homepage, and I'm going to show you how to navigate to these tools from here. So first, because we will come back to this, I'll point out that if you're interested in the grants that Sharissa mentioned a little while ago, here on our homepage, there's a big light blue banner where you can find more information about those. To get to everything related to this self-evaluation tool, you'll come to this yellow "What's New at Outdoor School" banner, and there's a button for self-evaluation tools. This button will take you to the page that houses all three of our self-evaluation tools. So the SEASET, which we're releasing today, is actually the third self-evaluation tool in this suite of tools. So the first one to come out was the Instructional Resource Self-Evaluation Tool, which supports reflection and self-evaluation on all the instructional activities that make up your outdoor school curriculum, whether they be things with learning objectives like field studies or some of those more unstructured activities. The Cultural Responsiveness Self-Evaluation Tool is sort of focused around equity, diversity, and inclusion, and this idea of culturally responsive outdoor school programs. And so you can click on either of these and see more information about those. We did a similar webinar like the one we're doing today for the Cultural Responsiveness Self-Evaluation Tool late last year, and you can find the recording of that event by clicking on this page. But today we're going to focus on the Special Education and Accessibility Self-Evaluation Tool because that's why you're all here. So I'm going to click on that page. When you enter this page, here is what you will find: a place to view and download the tool itself. So this will take you in here. We were pasting the direct link into the chat here in Zoom, but if you lose that link, you can always come to our website and that will allow you to download the document. The recording of this webinar will be posted up here with captions probably in 48 hours or so once we can get the captions processed. And then the third piece up here in this row is the Special Education and Accessibility Self-Evaluation Tool resources page. And what this does is offer resources that may be useful both as you're using the tool or if you identify a characteristic as one that you're particularly interested in working on. And so what we have are here in blue, we can see the names of the themes, and then every characteristic in the document has its own drop-down menu that includes resources related to that characteristic. And it includes a little bit of text sort of annotating what the resource is about. So for example, if your team was interested in targeting collaboration and communication as a characteristic to work on, you might come here and take a look at these resources and see if they will help you in your work. And so I won't go through all of these, but I will point out that here in the special education team involvement, because we know a lot of these conversations have to do with, thinking in advance, what are we going to need to apply for funding wise in our application? Here in this section, we list the link to our budget categories and fiscal policies, as well as the video about using Measure 99 funds to support students with exceptional needs. So I'm not going to go through this whole page. You can take a look at it later. There are some more resources on this page. The first is the Special Education and Outdoor School Guidance document. So this is the one that Stacy went over at the beginning that's directed towards school district and ESD or school teams. And so you can download that here to send to your school district collaborators. And then here you can find the 2 videos that we watched as part of this session. Of course, they will be encapsulated in the recording that we're going to post of this entire session. But if you're looking just for the individual videos themselves, you can access those from right here. All right. So let's see, I'm going to come back here, take us to the very end. And the last thing that we wanted to point out, as Sharzi mentioned, we have these grant opportunities open right now where we're soliciting proposals for folks to do equity, diversity, and inclusion work and improve accessibility at outdoor school sites. And so the SEASET is mentioned in that request for proposals as a possible tool that you might use to help move this work forward. And so we wanted to make sure that if you have not been made aware of those grant opportunities through some other forum, that we mentioned them here today. And so as I pointed out, if you go to our homepage, you can get to more information about those grant opportunities by clicking on that light blue banner that mentions the grants. And so I'm going to click us onto our final question slide and see if folks have any questions. And then I see there's some things in the chat, so I'll take a look at those as well. So let's see. I see a question, under equipment, would rentals be covered? Yes, my understanding is that rentals can be covered, but we always encourage folks, if you have a specific thing that you're wondering, can we rent this particular item, just check in with us at outdoorschool@oregonstate.edu, and we'll be happy to answer those specific questions. Let's see. So Jennifer Basham asks, and I'll direct this one to Steve or Stacy, some 504 plans address students with mental health and behavioral needs. Would you advise that we include school counselors in our CSET evaluation team?
Yes.
Steve says yes. Would you care to expand on that, Steve?
I mean, as with all the things here, it's really individualized. And again, teams for students are very diverse in terms of who supports them. But speaking specifically to mental health and behavioral needs, think about, and of course you think about this, is your context. You're in the woods, and this can be a pretty new experience for a lot of students. And so some really targeted advanced thinking around what that experience is and how to support it with those particular students, support team that know them deeper in terms of their mental health and behavioral needs is really a wise decision. How exactly you go about involving those folks, again, is going to be super individualized, but it's a great question. And I would say, heck yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions that you're hoping we will address live? Otherwise, you can see our emails up here. And as I mentioned, you're always welcome to email outdoorschool@oregonstate.edu, and we'll get your question to the right person. But we do have a few more minutes. So
Catherine, Christy,
awesome.
Catherine has her hand raised.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. Go ahead.
Okay, just a quick request for some clarification or some direction. We work with a lot of students who are English language learners, children of asylum-seeking families, and children of migrant farm workers. And so it seems like it might span two different rubrics, the cultural responsiveness and special education or exceptional needs. We're in the final stages of finishing our grant application for the equity and inclusion grant. And there's some questions coming up because we have a team that was part of our Naturalize Ahora grant, which is focused on the needs of those students, and are including some additional members, but we don't want to also have mission creep. We also recognize that we're small, so we want to be effective and we want to have a manageable thing to bite off in order to have some outcomes that are measurable and that we can have some success with. So is it possible in our grant application or looking at these two rubrics to think in terms of like a phased in amount of outcomes, mapping out, like if we're really focusing on English language learners, and then phasing in, focusing on a different subset of students, or should we really try to tackle everything at once? Because there's some trepidation about trying to do too much and not being effective at doing it all, because there are some discrete populations of students with exceptional needs that we're serving.
Thanks, Catherine. I am going to toss that to either Sharzi or Chris, who I see is on here, who have been more intimately involved with the grant process than I have, to give comments about focusing on one particular task or possibly doing a phased approach to focus on two. So Sharzi or Chris, would you care to weigh in on that?
Chris. Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind is, because you said that you were a smaller organization, looking at what you really can achieve in the time frame of the grant. I believe it's 18 months. Chris will correct me in the chat if I'm incorrect with that. But then the other thing to think about is, you said you have ELL students that you're working with. And so I just want to make sure that we're not conflating ELL, so English language learners, with special education learners, and how we're approaching the different rubrics, and how you would present that in your grant proposal. So one thing I will say about the grant proposal that we have is that it's unlike other grant proposals where you would put forth a grant proposal and the grant review committee would come together and then decide, of these 10, we only want to fund 5. We are trying to fund as many grants as we can. And we are also being very forthcoming with any feedback. So instead of outright denying any grant proposal, if we have any questions, we will send it back and ask for more clarification from an organization who put forth that grant, to ensure that what we're interpreting that you put in that grant is exactly what you're saying, and that you have the correct information. You can use more than one rubric. I will say this, the cultural responsiveness self-evaluation tool encompasses equity broadly, but the specific reason why we pulled out special education and accessibility is because that is very easy to erase, particularly within outdoor education, and because so much of special education and accessibility information knowledge laws are within the K through 12 formal education space. We wanted to ensure that we provided enough supports so that people understood, so that our outdoor school providers understood what that meant and could look at it, could focus in on it, though it will definitely intersect all of the tools. And there's no one person that's going to come to your outdoor school program and only be one social identity. And so how you present, how you are going to be working with those individual communities, or what your programming looks like, so you can do it in a phased, put forth a phased proposal, as long as you can finish the portions of it within the time frame, and also explain how you're going to sustain your improved programming, curriculum, what have you, past this funding period, where right now we know that we have funds for it. But if we don't have fund, we don't necessarily know that we'll have funds for it in future years. So how are you going to maintain what you're changing? Can you explain that so that you can provide us with a little bit more information, so that we know that that what we're helping you to fund is sustainable, if that makes sense. But you will always get feedback back. It will not be like, oh, we did not like this proposal, and so we are just denying it. We will send it back to you and ask for clarification. We will probably ask for more information around certain aspects, but you can put forth a proposal that is either a phased approach, or you can specifically focus in on a community, especially if you work the most with that community across the different schools that you're engaging in outdoor school. That makes sense to focus in, because those are the students that you're going to see, and you're building up those relationships with the schools and the districts and the teachers. So I hope that helps answer your question. And Chris, if I left anything out, or Sarah, because Sarah was at our grants office hours yesterday, I welcome y'all to unmute yourself and say anything that I didn't say.
Thanks, Sharzi. And really quickly, I will note it is 11:30, and out of respect for your time, we will stay on here if you have any questions or want to talk further about the grants. But thank you so much for joining us today. As I said, the recording of this will be available on our website in about 48 hours, and you can access all of the resources I toured right now. So we encourage you to check it out. And thank you again so much for joining us and for your commitment to supporting students with exceptional needs at Outdoor School. Have a great day, everyone. And again, we'll hang out here.